Today is the solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The Sacred Heart of Jesus has always been very close to the hearts of Jesuits. One of our former generals, Father Pedro Arrupe, popularized this devotion to a great extent. Tradition has it that our Lord appeared to Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque and through her communicated to the world the generous nature of his heart. Of the 12 promises that our Lord made to Margaret Mary, one is of very special significance, in which our Lord says that in his heart one will find an infinite ocean of mercy and forgiveness. This is very much in keeping with the Jesus that is portrayed by the Synoptic Gospels and the Gospel of John. As a matter of fact, when Jesus came into Galilee in the Gospel of Mark chapter 1 verses 14 and 15, he proclaims the kingdom, which is God's unconditional forgiveness and love, and expects nothing in return except an acceptance of that unconditional love. The proclamation is that the kingdom has come already and none of us can do anything to bring it about. It is given as a gift. It is given freely. What we have to do is receive the kingdom like a child receives it, with openness and with spontaneity. This is basically the love of God made visible in Jesus. Of the many things that one could say about this solemnity, I want to pick out 3 for our reflection today. And the first is that the heart is a symbol of the entire person. So the heart of Jesus is a symbol of who Jesus is. The Gospel of Matthew tells us that Jesus is Emmanuel, which means God with us and God for us. A God who cared for us at every single moment. A God who has not merely created the world and left it to its design, but a God who is involved with the world and who showed that involvement in the most tangible manner when he sent his Son. The second point is that our God cares not only for us, but for the universe. The wanton destruction of nature is not what God intended. When God created the human race and asked them to be fruitful and multiply, he asked them to use and not abuse the earth. And so the Feast of the Sacred Heart is a call to each one of us to also use the resources that God has given so generously and freely, not in a manner that is selfish and self-centered, but in a manner that is responsible. And the third point of the feast is that there is an intimate connection between the celebration of the Eucharist and the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I refer not merely to the ritual of the Eucharist, but I refer to the celebration of that Passover which the Lord himself celebrated with his disciples when he brought his whole life together in the symbol of the offering of the bread as his body and the wine as his blood. What are the implications of the Feast of the Sacred Heart for me? It means, first of all, that the love that I receive from Jesus is a love that I cannot keep to myself. It is not a love that I only assimilate and I'm happy with. It has to be a love that is shared. If it is really the love of God that I have in my heart, then I cannot but share it. The love of God is so bountiful, so magnanimous, that it just simply cannot be contained in an individual, and it cannot be kept inside one's heart and has to be shared. The second point is that this universe in which I live, the world in which I live, is given to every one of us in trust. God has created us as trustees to use responsibly all the beauty of His creation. If I abuse God's creation, it is because I have not understood that free gift which He gives me. And so today I make a resolution on this solemnity to use responsibly, to use sparingly, and to use as God would have used. And finally, the Eucharist that I celebrate every day must be a sacrament in which I make the Lord Himself present. Today, the Sacred Heart of Jesus will not be known by anyone unless I make the Lord present. When I love unconditionally, when I serve without expectation, when I give without counting the cost, then I celebrate the feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus again and again, and I make not merely the Sacred Heart of Jesus visible, but I make the risen Christ visible to all.